Hello, Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. Do you write professionally, as a hobby, maybe for therapy? If you've ever considered publishing, my guest, a children's book author, has lots of experience. She shares process, ideation, writing groups, scams, and her backstory. And now, Sally Lotz. Hello, everyone. Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. My guest today is Sally Lotz, and she is an author and a book coach. And she's going to tell us a little bit about herself.
Oh boy, put me on the spot. Well, I'm Sally. I'm an author. I write for children. I live in Florida, but I've lived all over the place. I am near the beach and near the big city of Orlando. That's about it.
My stepdaughter, I guess we could call her that, lives in Sebring.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, it's lovely down there.
I love my Florida where I live.
Good. I'm glad you do. I love my New York. I also live near the water. And sometimes in the water. Anyway.
Try not to do that.
Yeah, really. It's not preferable.
We have alligators.
There are some things that freak me out. I think if I were walking my dog and I saw a large snake, a large reptile, or a scorpion, I'd freak.
Yeah. I on my walks, I see deer, I see bears. I have only seen an alligator once. I have seen a couple of snakes. Mostly I see large birds because I live near a state preserve where there's a springs. So, and I've seen otters, river otters. So all those creatures come into my neighborhood.
Large bears, did you say, or just bears?
Yeah, bears.
Brown? Black?
Brown. I think they're black bears. Yeah.
Okay, black.
Yeah. But large birds. Birds that are like eye level with me.
2 can, 4 can, 10 can.
Herons, cranes, wood cranes, birds of prey. Yeah. Those are scarier to me than the alligator who's just chilling by the side of the pond.
Well, the good thought is that the alligator is looking for the birds, so not necessarily you.
He's not looking for me. Yeah.
And the bigger birds are looking for the baby alligators, and that's the way it goes.
And they're all looking for the little dogs. So gonna say.
Yeah. That's the scary, little dogs and cats. That's the scary part of those.
Yeah.
Big birds. We have a few of those here. It's very highly populated. So over the years, they've come back. After Superstorm Sandy, a lot of them started to repopulate. So I hadn't seen osprey in a long time, and suddenly they're in my backyard.
Yeah,
my backyard is next to 3 other backyards, so it's like we're on top of each other here. So seeing an osprey in a backyard, and then finding that it's just grabbed a little baby robin, you're like, wait. And you're like, oh, that could have been my neighbor's dog. So I guess the robin is better than the dog. Yeah,
it's nature.
It's nature. It certainly is. So when did you begin writing children's books?
So I've always written ever since I was a little kid. I like to write. I used to do plays and all kinds of fun stuff. Of course, I had to star, direct, and write the plays. And forced my younger little sisters to play the parts I didn't want to play. But I didn't start till I was in my 40s, actually writing. And we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but I grew up in a cult. And so my creative skills were not encouraged. They were discouraged. And so it took me a long time to pick up the pen and start writing. It wasn't until a friend of mine asked me, she's a writer. She said, why aren't you writing? You have such great stories. You make me laugh. You should be writing books. And so I went, oh, okay. And I just started learning how to do it and joined some groups and started writing for kids.
Joining groups is most every author I've ever spoken to has a writers group.
Yeah.
At least one.
It's hard to write alone. And what I decided to do was to join a group that was better than my writing. I wanted to learn from experts. So I joined a group, and that was great because it only made me get better.
Do you, you said a cult, so you mean fantasy for sure.
Fantasy, my cult.
You're in a cult, but explain that.
My mom converted when I was 5, and she joined what is called the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
Who is one of the largest and oldest doomsday cults. And I was in that until I was the age of 16, where I was kicked out of the house. And actually, that is really when I was in my late 20s, I really started journaling. So I didn't think I was writing, but I started journaling as part of my healing process with my therapist, was journaling. And that is a form of writing, obviously. Yeah.
So when you said a cult, I heard occult.
Oh,
and
okay.
I thought fantasy.
I was like, wait, fantasy? Well, no, fantasy. It wasn't really a fantasy. It was real. But I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah.
So that's where that came from.
Yeah.
So you said, are you still an active member of Jehovah's?
Me?
Yes.
No. I was kicked out of the.
You're not a member of any. You're outside. You're an outsider.
I am not a member of the Jehovah's Witness community at all. I am outside of my family, who's still very involved. Yeah.
These are difficult things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things.
Yeah.
Or do you? So you're writing. So your writing started from trauma.
It did, actually. It did. That's what took me back to when I was a kid and remembering that I used to write all the time for fun. But this wasn't the fun kind of writing. This was like a healing kind of writing. And probably why it took me until I was 40 to really say, hey, I could do this.
I think, Sally, a lot of people come out of they write because they're hurting.
Yeah.
I'm in the same situation where I've just recently realized I only write when I'm hurting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can write, but it's very difficult for me to find something of worth, my opinion, not anybody else's, find something of worth to write about unless I'm bleeding in some way. And so that's interesting. And I think that I don't think that a writer stays there, or at least I don't think every writer stays there, but I do think a lot of writers are writing from that. I just was reading something about Tennessee Williams that, he was prolific and he would often end up in hospitals. He was an alcoholic and a drug abuser.
Yeah. Well, that's how Stephen King was for years, and I think the best writers, when I'm reading writers who have really in-depth characters, and remember, I write for children that goes up to age 18. I can tell when a writer has had traumatic experiences in life or has had more than just the Susie homemaker, go home and mommy's in the kitchen and, the Leave It to Beaver or family, because their characters, right? Their characters
one-dimensional
have dimension, and they're not flat. We use our own life experiences and emotions in our characters. I mean, great actors do that. Artists who paint do that. Songwriters do that. I think anytime you have an attachment to something really emotional, when you're listening to a song, or you look at a painting and you look at the story behind it, there's usually something behind it that made it connect with you that way. And that's something about when I'm writing, I can really connect with my readers because I pull from my own source, my own emotional base.
I think, interestingly enough, readers do the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's watching entertainment, they're looking for that cathartic relationship to let go of something. They're
Mm-hmm.
not just, I mean, obviously, a comedy, a light comedy, or a rom-com. They're fun. They're fine because
Mm-hmm.
they're light and they don't require much effort. But you watch, you watch. Um, well, I'm thinking of Dvorak's. Oh gosh, the Russian doctor. Oh gosh, what is the Russian with? I can't remember anybody's name right now.
Dr. Zhivago?
Dr. Zhivago. Thank
I was like,
you.
Dr. Zhivago?
You watch Dr. Zhivago and you're a mess by the end of that movie.
Yeah.
Even Gone with the Wind, you're a mess at the end of that movie.
Yeah.
And it's not the same Dr. Zhivago is a heavy movie.
I'm a mess at the end of The Notebook. That one I can't watch.
Oh, The Notebook.
That takes me like days of recovery after I watch that.
There are a few of them that are, that are my favorites that are heartthrobs.
Yeah.
That are heartthrobs.
Yeah,
that was one of them.
Yeah.
But
that's something with writing, especially when writing for children. Of course, we don't want to get, traumatize the children, but it helps us to create those characters.
Yeah, because I think while children don't frame it as dramatically as parents would, everything frightens children.
Yeah.
And I don't mean frighten in a bad way. I don't mean to scare the bejesus out of a child. I mean, everything frightens them. First day of school frightens them. The first time they eat in a lunchroom frightens them.
And that's okay because it's new experiences.
Right. So that's essentially what I'm saying. And for them to read a story to realize that the characters are going through the same thing, it's a safe way for them to begin to relate to lots of things that are happening to them without having to have long conversations and expose themselves. And, I mean, trust is very important. And when you're young, you don't even understand what trust is. And telling somebody your stories, trusting somebody, and then finding out that they told 15 people. That's also not a good experience as a child. And kids do that.
Yeah.
Kids do that.
Yeah. And I find, writing for kids too also gives them a glimmer and a glimpse into somebody else's life and how other people live. Just, not like them. There's other kinds of ways that families are all over the world. So, I like that aspect. You can introduce different types of people and characters to children and ways of living. It doesn't mean that they're going to become that, but what it means is they can see it, and it's oh, not everybody looks like me, not everybody lives like me, not everybody has a house like me.
Well, also the questions of like, what's it like to be this?
Yeah.
I didn't know. Maybe they actually go to a map and look it up on the map to see where that place is.
Oh, they do. And if you got it wrong, they're going to let you know.
Yeah. That's okay. That really is the experience. That's okay, right?
Yeah. It's okay.
You've done your homework.
Yeah.
So homework. So when how do you come up with an idea? What's that look like?
Oh boy. So for me, the best way for me to get ideas, people think writers just sit here and go, got an idea. I get my ideas when I'm doing nothing. When I am out for a walk and I'm just walking, have my music on, or I'm out just not thinking about anything, I call it being purposefully lazy. So my last idea for a book, it's with my agent right now, is called Today is My Last Day as a Human. And I write for 12 and 13-year-olds. And so it's I saw that because I saw I cannot talk, sidewalk chalk art. I was living in downtown Sacramento at the time, and I was walking past all these Victorian houses, and some kids had written, "Today is your last day as a human." They had little gravestones and little skeletons, and I went, "That's my next book." And so I took that and I said, what would happen to somebody if today was their last human, but they didn't turn into a werewolf or a witch or a ghost or something like that? What would happen? So just went with it.
So, a lot of times people come up with these ideas, and by the time they get home, they're like, what was that idea?
No, I took a picture of it and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went back to my office and I wrote it down. I wrote a few things down. In fact, I'd met somebody from work that I knew on my walk, and I said, I just got the best idea. And he's like, what? I told him, he's like, yeah, that's the best idea. Yeah. So I suggest, if you are having these thoughts and these ideas, just pick up your app in your phone, the one you can voice memo, and voice memo it. Take a picture of it.
Yeah, I have many ideas in the shower, walking the dogs.
Yeah.
In the
See, you're
supermarket.
being lazy, but you're not, right? You're doing something, but you're not thinking about
forget
stuff.
them by the time I get home.
Yeah.
I do all the time. I'm like, you know what? I've got to come up with a practice.
Bring your phone with you, have your headphones, and just say, hey, Siri, better not say it. She'll start doing it. Take a voice memo and then you tell it. Because I've forgotten ideas and I was like, darn it, I should have done that.
I do it all the time. All the time.
If I take a picture of something that I see, like I have a lot of characters I see when I'm out, and I will jot them down real quick because it's too good of a character.
That's interesting.
I have a lot of people in my phone.
You're actually like you're online at the supermarket, and Junior is 3 ahead of you, and Junior and Mom are having a conversation. You're like, oh, this is a beautiful relationship here. I've got to remember it.
Oh, I remember. My friends all know. They're like, oh God, she's got her phone out. What is she doing? It's like, shh, just be quiet. I'm trying to take a picture.
So now you're writing books. How long are the books? About.
So it depends. So I have picture books, and those are about 23, 24 pages. My last book that came out was a novel called The Truth is a Lie, which is based on my story of growing up in the cult. That it's hard for me to go by pages because I go by words. That's about 56,000 words, so that's about 210 pages.
Okay, all right. So we're talking about a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Well, we're talking about a novel. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Even the picture books are beginning, middle, and end. But yeah, I write novels.
And how does someone who hasn't studied ad nauseum literature learn how tropes and climax and character development? How does somebody learn this? What is it like to just pick it up and just say, I'm learning it on my own? I'm going to do a group and I'm going to learn it on my own.
I'm also dyslexic. So there's that part. And I'm also ADHD.
You're very human.
There's that part. I made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. It's just trying. It's continually learning. It's reading books, and instead of just reading a book like a reader, I would pick it apart and circle things and pick up words and phrases that they used and things that attracted me to the character. What did I like about the character? What didn't I like? Having critique groups where I always had critique partners who were better writers than me, looking at my work and giving me advice so I could get better. I never wanted to work with somebody who was not as good as writer as me or the same level. I wanted better.
And someday
that's
you'll
a
be
bad thing. But for me,
right.
I wanted to learn. I didn't want to be teaching. Well, now I teach, but at the time, I didn't want to be teaching. I went to a lot of workshops and seminars, all in a professional world. There's a big children's writers group called SCBWI, which is global. I went to probably 3 or 4 conferences a year, Writer's Digest conferences, online things, and just learned. And mostly it was reading and practicing my writing.
As a writer, do you flow, or do you like, okay, it's 9:00, got to start writing?
I am an early bird, so I will get up early and write. Last Saturday, I stayed home all day and wrote because I had a deadline. But if I'm working on something new and I'm developing a new idea, I will just write whenever. And I carry a notepad with me, and I'll just write by hand and just jot things down.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah. It may be the old-fashioned way, but for people who are just starting out writing, the pen and paper slow your brain down and make you stop and think before you write, so you're not just jotting down a bunch of stuff. And there's also something about having the tactile pen in your hand and writing it on paper. There's like a brain connection. And so I don't write a whole book that way, but I will certainly start writing my notes that way and my ideas that way.
It's so you'll come up with an idea, and then I suspect that you pitch it to your agents to some extent, or no?
Well, at the time I didn't have an agent. And right then I only had an idea of a monster or something happening and what would happen. So then I had to come up with my characters. I had to come up with my setting and my time, what had happened. And so I had to do a little bit of that because I didn't have a whole story. I had the ending of the story, which is the best thing to have. Because if you have the ending, you have something to work for. If you just say, oh, I have a story about a girl and she does this, you don't really have a story. You just have a girl who's doing things. But if you have an ending, you have something you can work for and start reverse engineering it. Like, who's there? How'd they get there? Okay. What's this character like? Okay. And I had mistakes. I wrote the whole book at one point, and it was more dystopian feeling that I liked, and my main character was a boy. And I had this little side character. His best friend was a girl. And everybody who was reading my books, like this manuscript, was liking the girl. And I was like, I just had an epiphany, and I went, okay, I'm ditching the whole book. I'm keeping the concept and everything that happened, but I'm changing it to a girl, and I'm changing it to 1999. So I kept the whole plot and everything, but I just changed that, and it made the world of difference. But I didn't have that at the beginning.
It's difficult. It's somewhat discouraging for someone because it is a lot of pivots, and it is a complete lone journey.
It is. It can be, unless you surround yourself with other writers. But that was a book that I had written early on. I didn't have as much experience. So the two after that weren't as hard because I had them more formulated in my head before I started writing. I was a newer writer, and actually I was writing what I thought people wanted to read instead of writing what I wanted to read. And so when I got that, my main character shifted, the time shifted, the scene shifted, and everything became it just flowed. And so all my other books, I've done that way.
Is it wrong to think that we're still talking about the hero epic? Is it wrong to think that way?
Still talking about the what? The
hero epic. Like, isn't every story about the trials and tribulations of someone? And
it's the hero's journey. Every story is the hero's journey. I just taught a class last week, and one of the students in the class asked me if Does every story have to have an antagonist, which is the bad person? That's who the hero is trying to fight. In Star Wars, it's Darth Vader. Okay. And she said, mine doesn't have one. And then she started to tell me, she goes, it's a group of friends and we went on a trip and all these things happened. And I said, that's
the
your hero's journey. That's your antagonist. All the things that happened, everything that went wrong, and how you guys stayed together and you kept pushing through. She's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah. Every story is some sort of hero's journey. And it doesn't have to be a human. It can be forces of nature. It can just be yourself. It can be anything, but there has to be some kind of change or propelling forward. Even in mystery books, right? Obviously, that's got a big, they're trying to solve the mystery, right? But any book that you pick up, if you don't feel connected in some way to the main character, whether you don't like them, you can't stand them, but you got to keep reading, or you really like them and you want to see what's going to happen, it's because something's happened and you want to know what happened and you want to know how they solved it.
Yeah. I mean, and what I think most people don't necessarily understand is that everybody's like that. Even you say, oh, well, Bobby's really pretty simple. He still has his challenges. There's no one on the planet that sails through life.
Right. We're all on a different journey. My challenge is not yours. Yours is not mine.
And how we react to it. I mean, you might consider that you're having a bad day. Then you talk to a friend who tells you about their day and you're like, oh my God.
You never mind. I'll take my bad day. My car's running. My bills are paid. I got food on the table. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm good. So, I'm glad.
So, yeah. There's always, there really is always that. And that's not to take away the process, the experience, even the sharing of it. I mean, if I were to, the conversations you have with your friends, hey, how you doing? What's going on? They tell you, oh, really? Then what they say to you, what's going on? You tell them, and you're sharing.
Right.
You're sharing.
Yeah.
And they're all these, you won't believe this, what happened. And, it's flat, it goes up, it comes down. What happened? Oh, I don't know. You've got to call me next week to tell me what happened because I got to find.
It's a cliffhanger. I can't live like this. Yeah.
Right. And that's really, we may think that we live simple lives that don't incorporate the hero. We're all the heroes.
Yeah. Every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes 10 times a day.
Yeah. It might be a hardship for somebody to change that TV channel.
I know. Well, this morning it was, because whatever reason, Channel 3 there was nothing on Channel 3. I'm like, come on. I went, oh no, there's nothing on Channel 3. And that's how I started my day. And I laughed. I was like, because I just turned the TV off and I walked away. I was like, it's broken. Something's wrong. It's broken. And then I was like, no, it's not broken. Maybe Channel 3 is not displaying. And I went back and I turned on Channel 4, whereby they were telling me the news that there are no air flights. So I'm like, oh, well, there are bigger problems than just Channel 3.
Yeah, it's okay that Channel 3 is down.
Yeah, it's okay. That's really not as critical as everybody's at the airport like this with each other. That's not good. No. I mean, that's not good.
But those are the everyday things also that make great. Those little everyday things get put into books because they make it realistic, and they might be boring, but if you do it right and it makes those characters real and it makes the story real.
Right. And you string them along, suddenly you've got a life. Not you have a life, but the character has a life.
That's right.
And the people,
but you got to throw rocks at them while you're stringing these things along.
What's the process? What's the process like, ego-wise, when you're writing a book you're teaming up with someone else. You've got either a partner or you
Mm-hmm.
take it to a workshop and you're loving it and they rip it to shreds.
So you can't have an ego and you can't be too attached to it. You've got to love it and you got to own it. There's a rule of thumb. So I have taken my manuscript to a critique group and had people read it. 3 of them loved it. 1 of them didn't. So I did not consider the person who did not love it because it was 1 out of 3. They also had a different outlook than me. They were more biased towards a certain style of writing. And so I was like, okay, I got your opinion, but you're not my reader. You wouldn't pick up this book anyway. But the other 3 agreed. They gave me corrections, but they didn't say, I hate this. If that happened, I would listen and say, okay, what am I missing? Am I missing something here? Is it really that bad? Maybe let it rest for a little while and then come back and look at it with fresh eyes. Because everybody has their own biased opinion. And that's where you want to work with people who are better writers than you and you don't want to give your manuscript to your spouse unless they're a writer and they're maybe a New York Times bestselling writer. Stephen King I believe lets his wife read all the time, but she knows what she's doing. Because a lot of times people in your life will just say, yeah, that's good. But that's not what you need. My mom liked my book. Like, you know what? My readers are who have to like my book. So you can't really have that ego because writing is a long string of rejections. You have to have more of a thick skin and be willing to share your work and get better. I can't tell you how many writers I've met who will not share their work. I'm like, well, why are you writing? Who are you writing for? For teenagers. I'm like, well, if you can't share your work with other people in your world who write the same thing that you write, how are you going to share it? You're not going to get,
Yeah, it gets to the point where you're if you're writing for any type of posterity, you're going to have to release it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably a good idea to have,
yeah,
a test bed, at least somebody that can say, I really love this character, but I wish that whatever,
right.
like you said, where you had a setup and you had to flip it because everybody was identifying with the other character.
Yeah. It gives you an insight. Yeah. When you have the people read it and give you feedback and you can take it or you can leave it, but you have to get the feedback. Otherwise you're never going to grow as a writer and no one's going to read your book. Right. I worked with a lady early on and she was so close to her story. It was terrible. I mean, it was awful. And she wouldn't listen to and there was 4 of us working with her and she wouldn't listen to anybody. And we finally all of us just stopped giving her advice. We're just like, okay, your story's beautiful. Good luck.
That sounds like me.
Yeah.
Was it me that you were working with?
No.
No, it does sound like me. The thing is, that person is writing for therapy and is not writing to be an author. Or if they are going to become an author,
she was ready to become an author because she had a lot of experience in the educational world and she wasn't writing something that was readable for the age group. She barely read books for the age group she was writing for. And she didn't know the industry. Children's books is a whole different world. We have gatekeepers. We have parents, grandparents, teachers, librarians. If you live in Florida, you have the governor. I live in Florida.
Sometimes it's okay. I get it.
And a lot of people independently publish their books, which is fine. But when you're writing for a traditional publishing world, there's a lot of gatekeepers that you have to get through, and there's a lot of industry standards. And you have to really know your reader and what they're expecting, especially with kids. I can't write a book for a 12-year-old and my main characters are 7, because a 12-year-old does not give a crap about a 7-year-old. Adults, you could write any age and they're fine with it, but
Right.
there's very specific requirements in a kid's book that it's just the nature of the beast. It's because you're dealing with children and they're gatekeepers.
You do need to know who you're writing for, and you
Yeah.
do need to, it's not that you're writing for them and you need to tell them what they want to know. You just need to know how it engages with them. You need to um, there's a whole I'm trying to think of the words. It's sort of like a package. Like
Yeah.
when you're writing for a particular group, there's a persona who they are. And it's just like marketing. You're trying to get into that group, into that persona.
Yeah.
Trying to get them to buy. You need to know their pain, all of these things. When you're writing, it's somewhat similar. It's not, you're not placating them, but you need to be able to, what their pains are, and you can write about them and they can relate to them, and then they want to read more.
That's right. You have to know your niche. So I wouldn't be writing science fiction fantasy and then writing that for, 3-year-olds, because they're not going to get it.
No, they live it. Their whole life is science fiction.
The people who want science fiction fantasy is a very specific group, and they love it. Right. I have a hard time with it. I have a hard time critiquing it because I get all confused, but I can tell when it's good. I can tell when it's bad.
Right.
Because I'm a writer, so I can tell. But yes, you really have to know, no matter what kind of book you're writing, because I coach a lot of clients and they say, I want to write for everybody. I'm like, you can't write for everybody. You gotta pick one. And I say, Harry Potter, who was that written for? Everybody. I go, no, that was written for junior high age kids who liked magic and make fantasy, and they were 11 and 12-year-olds. Oh. That book organically found its way into the hands of the rest of the world because it was so well written, but it's not written for everybody.
Right. And here's another thing. So, you say, I want to write a book. Are you thinking you're going to make thousands of dollars?
I never tell anybody how much money they're going to make or not make, because everybody's story is different. There's people who make a lot of money. I have friends who make a lot of money with their writing. I have some friends who they are able to write full time, but they have a partner, so they have somebody helping. I have some people who don't earn any money at all, but they still are writing. So everybody's got a different story. But I never say that, because that's with anything you do. You could be the mechanic who's not earning any money, or the mechanic who's making a lot of money because you own your own shop.
Right. It's it's a
right.
strategy. And these days, there's big book houses, physical books. There's ebooks, and you could create your own ebook. There's ebooks with big houses, and then there's things like Medium and Substack. So you can create a whole book for an audience and do it without publishing at all. You could do it through Substack and subscriptions.
Yeah, there's Wattpad is also a big one. But all of them, you have to really build up your audience. You don't just make money because you're on there. You got to build up your audience. So that takes time. So it's whatever floats your boat, however you like to do it. I prefer traditional publishing, which is I have an agent and I work with publishing house. I have one book that's independently done, but that's coming off of out of that, and it's going to be traditionally published now. So that's but that's my preference.
It's is it? I mean, how would you say tell somebody to go to a book coach like yourself to get an idea of where and what to do. I think book coaches have become more popular. At least in the last 5 years, I've talked with people, and they all say that they either worked with a book coach or they are a book coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's something new, sort of like it was mysterious of how to publish a book. And then at some point in time, people said, can we just open the floodgates and stop making it such a secret and allow people in to publish books? We'll
Right.
teach them how to do it.
Right. Well, there's so many different ways to publish. The reason I chose the way I publish is because I write for children, and because it's such a specific industry, I need to be in the way I'm doing it so that I get in the hands of kids. But all the people I talk to who are wanting to write books have no clue about anything publishing wise. And the first thing they tell me is, I'm just going to put this on Amazon. And I'm like, let's talk about that before you do that, because there's so many other options. There's so many ways to do this. Let's discover what's best for your book and for you, not what your friend did. And then there's also scams. As soon as you start writing and you start searching online for things, people start coming at you. Hey, give me this and I'll give you this. I know you're a good writer, so we're going to take your book. But they don't know you. They haven't read your writing. You could be a crappy writer, but they play into that, dream of, I want to be a writer. Working with a book coach like me, I really help people decide and discover the path that they want to take with their book before we start writing, because that's a big hurdle for most people. And then discover what it is they want to write and help them see outside the box of what they thought they were going to do. And then work through all the painful parts, which is,
Everything.
writer's block and all the fear and all the things, because it's unknown. And then I help them when we're done to figure out, okay, let's get this done, published. And I give them different options and I go with them and help them. So I wish I'd had somebody like that when I was writing. I probably would have spent a lot less time doing all the training. I'm glad I have it because it made me a better writer. But honestly, a lot of the people I work with, they just want one book. They just have one book. It's all they want to write. It's their self-help book for their business. It's their story. They want to give it back, or they just have a story from their grandma that their grandma handed down, and they got to tell it because it's such a good story, but they don't know how. There's so many different reasons
like that.
There's a lot of different situations, and I get a lot of people who want to write for kids, but they've never read a kid's book, and it's like, okay, homework. Go and read 20 kids' books. I'll tell you, the children's industry changed from when I started. A picture book which is just the book with the pictures, obviously, not a board book. You could have up to 1,500 words. Now it's 100 or less.
Wow.
And people don't realize that. They come to me with these books like 5,000 words. Like, yeah, this is a book with pictures. I'm like,
less than 100 words? Is that because kids are reading less?
So picture books are meant for adults to read to the children. They're not storybooks. So picture books are all about the art and the picture. And the pictures tell 90% of the story. And so the words go along with it. And if you're writing a picture book, you don't need to illustrate it either. You just need the words. You don't need to worry about what the pictures are going to look like. So that's a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. I hear a lot of people writing picture books in there. I have to hire an illustrator. I have to do this. It's like, slow down.
That is a totally different concept. I mean, I'm thinking in my head that you would be reading to your child. You would say, the words, and then you would look at the picture, and then you start telling the story with the kid and having the conversation.
Go to the bookstore, go to Barnes & Noble or your little bookstore, pick up a picture book and look at the first page And you as an adult, read the words and then look at the picture and see how much of the story is in the picture and not in the words. And you'll be amazed. But the kids are looking at the pictures because kids are visual. And this is why reading to them is so important, because they're sitting on your lap or you're sitting next to each other, whatever it may be, and you're sharing the images with them, which is what they're taking in, and the words that you're reading, and their little imaginations are going crazy. You cannot do that by handing your child this and saying, "Hey, be quiet. I'm working." Picture book. You can read a picture book in 10 minutes, and it's so important for their brain and for their growth.
My grandfather. This may be a story that I tell myself, or this may be true. I don't know, because everyone's gone past, so I don't know. But I have very strong memories of my grandfather and his pipe smoke and the books that he would buy. They were Bible stories for the most part. So, Moses and the Exodus from the Egyptians with lots of pictures, and then Grimm's fairy tales with lots of pictures. And it's why I read to this day. Because of that experience that I had when I was, he would read to me even before I was aware that he was reading to me.
Yeah, I used to read to my kids when they were babies, and people go, "They don't understand." I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're looking at the visuals here, and we're close, and you don't need to plop them down in front of the TV or in front of your device. They will become their little brains are sucking everything in.
That's why I say I remember the pipe smoke.
You remember that. Yeah.
Vividly remember the pipe smoke.
Well, maybe don't want kids to remember the pipe smoke now, but
I know, but it smelled. It wasn't cigarette smoke. It wasn't
you smelled the pipe. Yeah.
The pipe smoke.
Yeah.
Not cigarettes. I'm not saying that he smoked. He
did
not smoke. Well, he was smoking a pipe.
Yeah.
I remember it vividly.
Yeah.
And
so that's why I write, because I write for children, because I want to have an impact on their life in some way. Because I remember vividly as a child reading books and my imagination being sparked, going to different places, learning about different people, learning about things about myself, as I was growing. And because I grew up in a cult, right? So there was a lot of things I wasn't allowed to know, so I think it's important.
Yeah, it is very important. And it's, reading is very important. I travel more in books than anywhere else. And people might say that's bad. You should travel more. And I'm like, because I can go anywhere, even fantasy places.
Yeah.
And you can't book a flight to nowhere. I can.
I can. And even better than that, you can take your book to nowhere and you can go somewhere with that.
Yeah, exactly.
You can go to the beach with that, or you can go sit, in the doctor's office if that's where you're at, or you can go sit. And take your break at lunch and read it.
I can relive it, and it's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
Oh, books are fabulous things. Who is your most favorite author?
Oh my gosh. That is a hard one because I have so many favorites. So I read children's books a lot. But when I read adult books, I read Stephen King. I read, I don't know how to say his name. It's because he's Norwegian. It's J.O., and I think it's pronounced Ho Nesbo. He writes like this police officer, who's like alcoholic and smokes and he's trying to solve these crimes. They've made some movies out of his books.
Who is the star for his books?
Oh, I don't remember. It could have been Daniel Craig. I think one was called the Snowman.
Was it Daniel Craig was the star?
I think so.
Oh man, he's my favorite.
I'm picturing it, and I'm trying to think if that was him or not. But all the movies start to run together. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like to read mysteries. Agatha Christie, I could not get enough of when I was a kid. I would just read Agatha Christie, all of her books.
Nancy Drew?
Not a Nancy Drew fan. Nancy Drew was, sorry, I just felt like she was too weak for me.
I did read a lot of Nancy Drew books. I didn't
Yeah.
like them, but I don't remember a single one. But I
Yeah.
did read
I skipped Nancy Drew, went right up to the Queen.
mystery books are a lot of fun. You can't put
Yeah.
them down. You can't put them
Yeah, I
down.
can't put them down. But, for kids, I read a lot of different authors. I got to say, of course, J.K. Rowling, I can't, she's the queen to me. She can weave a story. I once had this man mansplain to me how J.K. Rowling could not have possibly written the Harry Potter series because she was a woman and how could she know all those things? And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Maybe you
How
need
could she
to meet.
weave that story together? I go, I'm a writer, right? He goes, oh, you are? I go, yeah. So maybe you don't understand. So I was like, oh my gosh.
I think I think that like I said, some people are fairly simple and they see things very simply, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
Nothing wrong with that. But
no,
he's discounting how deep other people can be.
exactly.
So
So yeah, so
that's
she would
okay
be
because
my queen.
he would never be able to go out on a date with J.K. Rowling because
He didn't get to go out on a date with me.
and that's a good
I
thing.
I had also Judy Blume was a big influence for me as a kid. So because of
I'm
course
not familiar.
I
Yeah.
started with her books, the Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, which was just these little books, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. And I was like, oh, okay, this is better. This is telling me more. Okay, I'm normal. I'm not weird. So yeah.
I think a lot like J.K. Rowling. I think that um, people who write books for children are not necessarily writing books for children. They're just
Yeah.
writing them. Oh, that let's put it this way: we never grow up.
Right.
Some of those things never leave our memory, permanently are ingrained. Some
Mm-hmm.
situations, and when they play out again, we may not recognize them for playing out again, but they are permanently in our DNA.
Yeah.
It's it's like Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Now, you may not, when you were younger, you may not have celebrated Christmas, but um, I'm Jewish and should never have celebrated Christmas. There's something about Christmas that is in every child.
Yeah. It's the fantasy, the make believe, the wish. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that people say that writing for children is easy. It's like, no, we have the hardest audience. Are you kidding me?
That's right.
We have a child will tell you exactly what they think. This
Exactly.
stinks, and like I said earlier, I have all those gatekeepers to go through. So yeah,
It's not, yeah,
yeah,
that is it. That is
but
it.
I love it.
It's so share with the audience some books that you have written.
So my last book that came out was called The Truth is a Lie. And that one is still on Amazon for a while until it comes down and gets republished. So it's going to change, but it's up there for right now. My other three books, I think my other book is still up there. My publisher went bankrupt during COVID. They shut down. So I have a book called Jersey Spots, which is a picture book. And it's about a cow who has no spots. And she doesn't like that she looks blank and different from everybody else. So she has a way of fixing that. And then my other two are on a book app that's only in schools. So you can't get those unless your kids are in school and they have that book app. But I have a couple more that I'm working on with my agent. So
everybody should keep their eyes peeled for books by Sally Lotz.
that's right.
Are you? Can you share with people some of your social hashtags where they could find you on social?
Yeah, so I have a website, which is my name, sallylotz.com. All my books are there. I also I'm on Instagram, so it's Sally J with a J like Judge or Joe, just let out my middle name, Lots. And I am on TikTok, as Sal the Writer.
So, thank you very much for sharing all that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I enjoyed listening. I am a writer at heart myself and interviewed you for them and for me. So perhaps we'll be talking.
Okay. Well, I hope I gave some insight into the world of writing.
Yes, I most certainly enjoyed it. I'm similar to you. I've been writing since I was very young. Have let's see, things like diary.
Oh, that's precious. That's like gold
I
right
often
there.
will read through it and go, I remember that. Or what am I talking about?
What was I thinking of?
And then I'll find comments from my sister and go, oh my God.
She read my diary.
She read my diary. So
that's a story right there. Keeping your diary and having your sister write in it.
Yes, it is. We all have these little stories. So maybe we have one book in ourselves. Maybe we have a few poems. Maybe we just have
you have a short story. Maybe you have a short story. Mm-hmm. You never know.
I think we're all authors in some way, shape, and form.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
And thank you, audience. And that's a wrap.
We didn't have any tea, though, or coffee. We didn't have any coffee.
Oh, well, we had water.